Hey everyone, it's time for more of Boy at the Back of the Class by Onjali Q Rauf. And the last time we were together, we were learning about our main character's uncle, Uncle Lenny, and he's coming over to visit them. And I think it's an exciting time when he comes over to visit. So I will start on page 125. He's a taxi driver and only works at night. He loves his job and tells us the funniest stories about all the different kinds of people who have jumped into the back of his car. Like the time a famous actress got in and ordered him to drive around for a whole hour just so he could get some sleep. She could get some sleep. Or the time a large Italian family spent the whole ride silently fighting over a single portion of fish and chips. Whenever my Uncle Lenny visits us, he always brings us a large bag of food shopping and a chocolate bar just for me. He usually doesn't come with my Aunt Christina because she doesn't like us. I don't know why, but it's okay because I don't like her either. She's very beautiful and is always perfectly dressed with perfect hair and with perfect makeup on her face. But she wrinkles up her nose whenever she sees something she doesn't like, which is nearly all the time. So she always looks as if she smelled a bag of bad eggs. She has a fake smile too. It's one of those smiles that shows lots of teeth, but which never travels to any part of her face. I don't trust people who can't smile with their whole face. It means they're trying to hide something from you. Fake smiles always make me want to get as far away from the fake smiler as possible. Their son Jacob's okay, but he's only 2 and likes to break things. So I try to hide all my best toys from him whenever he comes over. After I finished setting up the Scrabble board, I helped Mom tidy up the house, and she was making my bed sheets extra straight when the doorbell rang. All right. Who's my favorite nearly 10-year-old doing? Shouted Uncle Lenny when I opened the door. He always says that, even though I know I'm the only nearly 10-year-old he knows, which means he can't have any other favorites. Okay, I shrugged. Only okay, he asked, bending down and looking me in the eyes. Might need to send you to the smile doctor. I smiled wider. That's better. He ruffled my hair and gave me a kiss on the cheek, then heaved 2 large grocery bags into the kitchen. Good afternoon, said my Aunt Christina. Her lips were pinched together and she was wearing so much perfume that it made my nose tickle. Jacob's asleep, so you'll have to play with him later, she said matter-of-factly, as she carried Jacob in through the door and stuck out her pointy face at me. I stood on my tiptoes and gave her a kiss. She pulled away quickly. Right. What have you been up to then? Asked Uncle Lenny, as he came over and steered me to the kitchen table. I think he must be so used to driving his taxi that he liked to drive people around too. Nothing, I shrugged. Do you want to play Scrabble with me now, Uncle Lenny? We'll have a game after lunch, my little tiger. He smiled. I'm not on until 5 today. Darling, why don't you tell Uncle Lenny all about your new friend? Asked Mum as she set the table. Oh yeah, the pomegranate boy, said Uncle Lenny. Mum told me. What's happening there then? Lots, I said. And I began to tell him all about the big fight and the mysterious plant pot murder and the great baked beans bag trap and Ahmet's story. And as we ate our lunch, I told them all about the bombs and the fires and the orange boat and the tents and Ahmet's cat and the railway track with the wall with the barbed wire on it. Uncle Lenny shook his head and muttered, "Poor Tyke," every few minutes. And Mum nodded along, looking sad sometimes, but Aunt Christina looked bored. Then, just as I was about to tell them about my new list of questions, Aunt Christina said, "Doesn't surprise me you'd want to be friends with a refugee kid at all, sweetheart. You have lots of things in common with him." What, with your gran being a refugee too? Uncle Lenny and Mum looked up sharply. I can't even bear to think about it. Imagine being a war refugee back in the day before they got all loads of benefits and houses nicer than ours. Uncle Lenny looked up angrily and was about to say something when, just then, Jacob began to cry. Aunt Christina jumped up and with a sniff said, "Oh dear, seems he's christened his nappy again," before rushing out of the room. "Mum, is that true?" I asked, looking at Mum so hard that it felt like my eyes were about to pop out of my head. "Was Gran a refugee too?" "All yours," muttered Uncle Lenny as he got up and walked over to one of the shopping bags. "I'll get dessert, shall I?" Mum looked at me for a moment and then said, "Yes, sweetheart, it is. Your Grandma Jo. We went to see her with Daddy when you were little. Do you remember her?" I nodded, not because I really remembered anything, but because I had looked at all the photographs hundreds of times. I was 5, and it was the last time my mom and dad and me went on holiday in a real plane. We went to a town called Salzburg, which is in a country called Austria, because that's where Dad lived before he moved to England. He used to talk about the mountains and the rivers and the way the birds always seemed to follow him around. He looked so happy in all the photographs. So did Mum. I seem to be crying in most of my photos, so I'm not sure if I was happy or not. I really don't remember anything about the trip except for the large green wooden caravan my Grandma Jo had in her back garden. Dad used to sleep in it in the summer holidays when he was a boy. My granddad had built it before he died, which is why Dad wanted to become a carpenter. There's a photo of me and Dad sitting on the steps, and it's the only photo of me where I'm not crying. Even then, I must have liked the idea of sleeping in a bright green caravan. I really couldn't remember anything about my Grandma Jo. We had lots and lots of photos of her and Dad, and I always look at them whenever I miss Dad too much. She had short gray hair and wore glasses that were tied to a long golden chain, and she always wore flowery tops and white trousers. I wish I could have remembered her more. But sometimes no matter how hard you try or how badly you might want to, your brain just can't reach back that far. "Why was she a refugee?" I asked. "Did she run away from bombs like Ahmet?" Mum stayed quiet as Uncle Lenny placed 4 large eclairs on the table in front of us. I love chocolate eclairs because it's like having 3 desserts in one. But as much as I wanted to eat my eclair, I also wanted to hear the answers to my questions more. Uncle Lenny sat back and cleared his throat. "Don't think they've done World War II in school yet, have they?" he asked my mom quietly. Mom shook her head. "World War II?" I asked. "You mean there's another one?" Uncle Lenny nodded. "Yep, just like the one you learned about last year, but twice as bad," he whispered, as though it was a secret. Mom put my eclair on a plate and pushed it towards me. "All you need to know, darling, is that Grandma Jo was a wonderful person and that she helped lots of refugees just like your friend Ahmet run away from a war too," she said. "Were they running away from Syria as well?" I asked, wondering just how long a war lasted. "No, darling," said Mom, putting her own eclair on a plate. "They ran away from a different war, one that started in Germany, and they were running away from people who called themselves Nazis." "Oh," I said, wondering just how many wars I needed to learn about. "Anyway, the important thing is she survived, and she got to see you," exclaimed Uncle Lenny as he gave my hair a stroke. "Exactly," said Mum, tapping my hand. "Now eat up, and let's get a game of Scrabble going before Uncle Lenny has to leave." I nodded, and knowing that my mom didn't want me to ask any more questions, broke open my eclair. That afternoon, Uncle Lenny stayed and played 2 whole games of Scrabble with us, and Aunt Christina watched Jacob break one of Mom's vases, rip a book, and throw my Lego bricks across the room. Mom won the first game, and Uncle Lenny won the second one, and I got the lowest points I had ever gotten in history. But I didn't mind. I don't think you can really focus on playing a game when you've just found out that your grandma was a refugee who had helped lots of other refugees run away from a war too, even if you're playing a game that's as fun as Scrabble. That's the end of it for now. More next time. Bye.